Hi everyone, I'm meteorologist Tony Petrarca. Welcome to another edition of Beyond the Forecast. Alongside of me, meteorologist Catie McNeil. You counting the days until spring?
I am definitely getting ready for some warmer temperatures, and of course we'll get into all that, but it's been a very cold winter so far. We've had some pretty cold days in January and February.
It has been. So we're going to stay on the topic of course, winter weather, a look back, look where we are right now, kind of a look ahead. We've got a number of questions about winter storms and blizzards and things like that. But you're right about it. It's been a colder than average winter so far.
And I feel like we've had kind of a milder trend the last, say, 2 to 3 years.
Oh,
so
yeah.
for a lot of folks, it was like, oh yeah, this is what true winter in New England feels like.
Yeah, in fact, we're going to show some numbers as to, the last, since 2011, how warm the winters have been. We get a number of great questions, some on blizzards and some on winter storms. So we'll get to those right now, and then we'll talk about where we are with the winter so far, and we'll actually go back to our original prediction, which is back on November 21st. Mm-hmm. It's kind of
how we're doing
a report card.
Yeah, a report card for us. But yeah, let's jump into question one here. Okay. This is from Kathleen in Charlestown. She asked, does the chance for a blizzard diminish now that we are this far through the winter? And I would say the short answer is no. We are not quite out of the woods just yet. And we were talking a little bit about this before. Historically, we could see blizzards or nor'easters even well into March.
Yeah, I mean, we've had some notorious storms in March. Nor'easters, not just snowstorms, but big rain and big wind storms as well. So really not quite out of the woods yet as far as some big coastal nor'easters during the month of March. We don't see that in the short term. Now we're taping this as of today's the 12th, right?
I believe so, yes.
February 12th, and we don't see anything looming on the horizon. But you never say never in New England, especially during March. And even April, we had an April Fool's storm. Mm-hmm. Now I forget the date. It was in the early 90s. But 2 feet. It was kind of a storm that caught a lot of people by surprise. Mm-hmm. About 2 feet of snow. Yeah. On April 1st.
And I think kind of the ingredients have been there so far this winter, and even this week we're seeing repeated chances for storms popping up, but just the conditions haven't really met the proper requirement to give us that big storm yet.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many moving parts in the atmosphere. There's so many puzzle pieces that have to come together to get that major winter storm, that blizzard. I find people will come up to me and say, we haven't had a real decent snowstorm in quite a while. I mean, the last decent storm was actually a blizzard in January of 2022.
Was it 2022? Yeah.
And really, since then, there hasn't been, especially this winter. I think our largest storm so far this winter has been, at least with the records I kept at the airport in Warwick, like 4.5 inches.
Yeah, probably this past weekend. Yeah. And with that, it was certain things were in place. We had the cold air, but not really reinforcing cold air, and the storm also moved through far too quickly. So we didn't really have that large window where we're getting heavy snow for maybe 6-7 hours at a time.
That's a good point in duration. Like you get the storms coming through, but you need them to stick around for quite a while, and some of these are real quick movers, so they don't last long, which means, of course, you don't get a lot of snow. The question 2 is still on the topic of winters. How do most of our winter storms form?
So that,
for instance, one of them is the clash of air masses. We're always looking for big, huge temperature gradients, warm air colliding with cold air, especially along the East Coast. But it's more than just kind of warm tropical air and cold Canadian air colliding. The jet stream plays a huge factor, and we were talking about how some storms move through quickly and others don't. That's based on the strength of the jet stream, the steering winds in the upper part of the atmosphere, how the jet stream is configured. Does it not only intensify storms, but does it slow them down along the East Coast so that you have more than just 5 hours of snow? You have 12, 18, in some cases 24 hours worth of snow. And then you need moisture. You can have all the cold air in the world, but without any moisture feeding into these storms, moisture sources being the Atlantic and the Gulf of Mexico. So all these, we talked about these puzzle pieces and these moving parts coming together.
It's all very hyper-specific, and we've seen a lot of situations here where maybe we've had a storm come through. I mean, earlier in the winter, late December into January, it was very dry and cold, which is not very conducive for big nor'easter. You want that moisture, like you said, you need that southwestern kind of warmer flow influence as well as the colder air, but you don't want too much of one or the other. So it's very, very specific. So when we talk about these big storms, a lot of things need to come together for it to work.
And there's a graphic we'll show you afterwards, but you bring up a good point where, you had, the cold air in January, but you didn't have a lot of the moisture to coincide with getting some decent snow. This one brings back memories. How long?
I wasn't alive for this, but.
How long? You told me I'm old.
No, never.
How long did it take for the snow from the blizzard of 1978 to clear out? That's Anna from Cranston. There you go. How would you like to make that for an accumulation forecast?
Yeah, I can't even.
I mean, that's just it's the benchmark of all snowstorms. It's a 2-day storm. So, and we talked about the jet stream. The jet stream was configured in such a way that not only did it intensify the storm very rapidly, but it slowed down. And it ended up being more impactful. How long? It took the state a week really to kind of get back to normal. There was articles called the week the state stood still. It really took a good 7 days to kind of get back to normal. And one of the reasons why is that to clear the roads, it's so much easier when you don't have 3,000 cars abandoned.
Yeah.
So now you got to tow one car at a time off the highway before you can clear it. I mean, my dad left his car on the highway during the blizzard of '78 on Monday night and had to walk to downtown Providence where he had to stay. So a lot of people have abandoned their cars and caught off guard. The one thing we should point out, the blizzard of '78, the storm, we were anticipating a storm the night before. In fact, there was a winter storm warning the night before.
Well, I was going to ask about that, like with the technology being so different then versus now, I'm sure people's preparedness may have been a lot different.
Exactly. And, the forecast was up to 15 inches of snow, which we got. We just didn't know about the other 30 on top of it.
A little bit more than anticipated.
So it ended up being a much stronger storm than expected. It lasted longer. But the big surprise with that, I remember this very well, Sunday night, I'm all excited. I'm a kid. There's going to be no school. And you wake up on Monday morning, there's nothing on the ground. And the short of it is that the storm ended up arriving several hours later. So
and then ended up being worse.
Well, then everybody ended up going to school and going to work because they
oh wow, okay, I didn't realize that.
Yes, so and then when it started to really come down hard later in the morning and during the afternoon, everybody tried to leave at once. There's massive gridlock. The people are stranded, and that's the blizzard of '78. So the quick question, the answer to that is that it took about a week to get things back to normal.
Yeah, I mean, you see, even with a certain amount of preparedness, getting that much more snow than you anticipate, crews can't keep up with that, unfortunately.
And too many abandoned cars on the road. Question 4, I want you to take that. I'm going to queue up a graphic here. Let me see if it's up.
This is from Milo and Warren. What conditions need to be met for it to qualify as a blizzard? We were talking a little bit about that, but one thing that you mentioned that maybe people wouldn't realize is you don't necessarily need a foot of snow for these qualifications.
You have 4 inches of snow.
The accumulations could be lower. It's the other factors that lead to that qualification of a blizzard. So with that, you need 3 things: at least 3 hours of strong winds, sustained or frequent gusts of 35 plus miles an hour, poor visibility, less than a quarter of a mile, and snow, of course. But the accumulations do not have to be very high for that blizzard warning per se to take effect.
Exactly. You can have 4 inches of snow and still have whiteout conditions. Actually, that's kind of a typo. It has to be 3 consecutive hours of all 3 of those conditions
of categories to fit that qualification.
And we had, I mean, in the blizzard of '78, we had multiple hours of this, and we're not talking wind gusts of 35 and '78. We had hurricane force winds.
Yeah.
We had actually storm surge and ocean flooding across Massachusetts. Of course, we had the poor visibility, had the whiteout conditions, and it just lasted for hours and hours and hours. And the net result was a tremendous amount of snow.
And we even saw blizzard warnings in Louisiana not too long ago, which is
incredible.
I cannot believe, I've never seen anything like that. I have a friend that works down there, and he's from New Hampshire originally, but just experiencing that down there and seeing the videos of people out and about, this is like a once-in-a-lifetime thing.
And parts of Louisiana to date have had just as much snow as we've had here in southern New England. In fact, let me show you, get this next one, next graphic up. Oh, that could be a problem. Oh, no, I hit the wrong button. Oh, I hit CG8. Let's try that again.
There we go.
So this is our original forecast back on November 21st. A typical winter, December through March, in Providence, we averaged about 35. Last winter, 18. Our prediction for this winter is 20 to 25 inches. And you look at where we stand right now. So far for the month of February, which has been the snowiest month so far this winter, 7.7. Where the official records are kept at the airport in Warwick, 12.7. To date, we should have had about almost 24 inches of snow.
So we're still well behind that. And if it weren't for this past weekend system, we would be even farther below that. And obviously, like you said, this is for the records for technically PVD at the airport. Other areas have seen a little bit more, but overall it has been a very underwhelming showing for snowfall here in southern New England.
So far as of February 12, we're only, we'll call that 13 inches. Can we add more to that? Certainly, we have a ways to go. We can take a look at the review so far, and you had brought up, Catie, a good point. For the month of January, the temperature, while this doesn't seem like much, it was 2 degrees below average. Now, that includes both day and nighttime temperature. Snowfall, 2.3. So that was 8 inches below average for January. And there was a moisture deficit or a rainfall deficit of nearly 2 inches.
And we've been in a moisture deficit now for several months. This is going even beyond, I know we'll talk a little bit more about that, but that goes even beyond this winter. We've been in a backup for deficit moisture-wise for several months since the fall. Yeah,
in fact, we'll show you the drought update in a little bit. But yeah, so January, it's a cold month, but you didn't have a lot of moisture to crank out some decent snow.
And you were mentioning the jet stream. It was very far south, hence why areas that normally wouldn't be seeing wintry precipitation, ice and snow did, which is very rare for them. But for us, with the jet stream being that far south, you're not getting that gradient, that difference between the warmer air and the colder. It was just kind of all cold and very dry as well, with that kind of northeasterly flow or westerly flow from Canada.
So imagine that. You had to be in the Florida Panhandle in January to get a decent storm.
Which you don't often see a setup like that. It's very, very rare.
Yeah. So December wasn't exceptionally cold, but it was about a degree below average. Snowfall, we go wah wah again, 2.7. So for the month, it was 5 inches below average in December for snowfall. But look at the rainfall. It was a wet month, nearly 8 inches of rain, nearly 3 inches above average. So a good case here that you had the moisture in December, but you never really had enough cold air to get any decent snow.
Yeah, it just started, I feel like, getting colder towards the end of the month, around Christmas time, a little bit after. But then at that point, the pattern we had was not in place anymore, so then January was very dry, unfortunately.
So now you go to Feb so far, so we're halfway through the month. It's running colder than average, 1.5, and again, that includes day and nighttime temps. Snowfall is actually, to date, running above average, nearly 8 inches of snow. Rainfall is about, moisture is about on target so far for the month. So when you look at all 3 months, now this is considered what we call meteorological winter, so December, January, February. The winter is running below average temperature-wise. So our original forecast was for a milder than average winter.
With La Nina in place,
So it has been a colder than average winter. The one part of the forecast that is so far what we were thinking is that there wouldn't be as much snow.
Yeah. Yeah, precipitation was supposed to be slightly below average, but temperatures were supposed to be slightly above. So we have kind of had a little bit of a change up in that way, but the dry conditions have kind of prevailed here. But as we mentioned, we do have some chances coming up, nothing big in the forecast, but certainly the pattern has become more active lately, and that could beg the question, you know, how are we looking for the rest of this month and even into March, as we mentioned?
So in the short term, now again, we're recording this February 12th, we have a number of systems coming through there, but they look like mixed bag ones where you get snow, sleet, and rain.
Yep.
And obviously that reduces snowfall accumulation. So you get a little bit of snow, but in the end you get that transition over to ice.
Yeah, which is not helping also with things sticking around. We get that kind of melting, muddy cycle, then the next system comes through and we're kind of seeing a lot of the same. So it's been tough to get a grasp on it so far this winter because we've had very juxtaposing kind of factors in place, very cold conditions, then maybe a little bit warmer one day, seeing some rain. So it's been very kind of up and down, but that's, I mean, typical of southern New England, unfortunately.
So the big glaring thing here is that we have been cooler to colder than average so far for the winter season. And when you look at this now, since, I mean, you see a lot of red there. These are winter since 2011, and look at all, especially from 2015 through now, through last winter, with the exception of 1 year, these temperatures have been running above normal. We may actually squeak out this winter as being a little bit colder than average. And it's been quite some time since we've seen that.
Yeah, which, like I mentioned, I think people were not really used to it because it has been kind of so temperate, especially the last 3 years. Besides the blizzard we hadn't really had a lot of snowfall, and it's been warmer. So this winter has been a lot different in that regard, at least.
Right, and you point out the blizzard. That was, is that 20? That's 22. So
yeah.
If you were to exclude that one-time big storm, the blizzard in that year would have been below average as well. So you go back to since 2000, the winter 2018-19. Now, granted, 2021 was close to average. The snowfall has been below average. Last winter, only 18 inches of snow. Right now, we're standing at only 13. You know, do we end up with another, you know, below average. As far as snowfall? But as you know, it only takes one storm to kind of boom, and then you're back to.
And I know one thing we talk about a lot is 2015 was the biggest year we've had in the past 10 years, 15 years.
Oh, look at that number.
And look at how the stark contrast there. And that was a winter that we had just back to back to back large accccumulating storms.
And it's weird because it started off so slow.
Yeah.
And then like a light switch.
All of a sudden.
We had the first one, I think, late in January, and then it was like every
boom,
three.
Boom, boom, yeah.
That was a fun time.
And we haven't. I know. I was still in high school then, but I remember having a lot of snow days that year.
Incredible. Just some fun numbers that we came up with. The coldest day so far this year was, now these are the airport in Warwick, 6 degrees. Of course, that was an overnight.
Yeah, we had that kind of cold snap in January. It was very cold for a few days. Some negative readings with wind chills. Coldest temperatures I remember in quite some time.
Yeah, we did have some warnings in some rural areas below zero, but we're using the airport numbers as a reference here. Warmest day this winter was 61 degrees back on December 17th.
That seems like a whole other world compared to what we've seen lately.
And the most snow, I mean, this is the most recent snowfall from February 8th and 9th at the airport in Warwick, about 4.6. So it's been a while since a decent, like, double-digit snowfall.
Yeah, even in the forecast, we really just haven't seen anything that's met the requirements. I think what we really need is this past weekend I was working, obviously. You know, we saw these heavy snow bands coming through, but it was just for too quick of a time period. You really need the cold air, reinforcing cold air, and a strong enough storm that's going to stick around to really bring those totals up.
In fact, that February 8th, 9th snow was a quick mover.
Yeah.
The most rain, and this actually brought some flooding, nearly 5 inches of rain back on December 11th. You know, take all that moisture with some cold air around, and there's your blizzard.
There's the blizzard, that big storm, but yeah, unfortunately so far we haven't quite seen that. But we do still have a while to go here. So certainly some opportunities could present themselves in the next few weeks. But as we mentioned, we've been in a deficit moisture-wise since, I don't even know now, the summer, like
with
August,
wildfires
September.
and things like that. So now this isn't an improvement of late, but still, at one point we were in
a severe
and even extreme.
Yeah.
So we're now in that that moderate category. There's been some improvement out towards the Cape as well. Abnormally dry though out towards the Connecticut River Valley. So still in somewhat of a deficit. This drought monitor is updated once a week. In fact, the new one's actually coming out tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yeah.
But there we stand as far as moisture. So.
So still ways to go.
Still ways to go. Though I know you did put up, you did create a couple of maps that do show, at least for the next 8 to 14 days.
Kind of what we're looking at going forward.
Yeah, so can we get any additional moisture? Now this will take us to almost the end of February. And you see a little sliver of green indicating some moisture from Florida up into New England, perhaps running a little above average. And looking at that suggests that we still have this kind of an active jet stream where you get systems coming up the East Coast.
And we've kind of been seeing that similar pattern kind of coming up from the southwest or even westerly and tracking up towards southern New England. But again, all these other factors need to come into play. Will the cold air continue to be reinforced, or will we kind of see a shift in that way? But certainly the chances are there.
So what's interesting with this is that this kind of hints at perhaps a more active jet stream, a little bit more in the way of moisture. Now we need cold air. Let's take a look at the 8 to 14 day outlook.
Drum roll.
Ooh,
oh.
Look at this. Now this
Below
takes us
average.
And in fact, the darker colors indicate the percentage chance of it being well below average. So this would take us to the end of February. So with a more active storm track and perhaps temperatures trending colder than average, can we get a couple of decent snow events out of this? Remains to be seen. Now we're taping this as of February 12th, and what we have coming up over the next couple of days, a couple of systems coming up, some snow, some ice, but both indicating eventually rain winning out.
Yes. Yeah,
there are some snow lovers out there that want to, and there are some that are like, you know what? Let the Florida,
keep it away.
let the Florida Panhandle have it.
Which, I mean, I think as we've been saying throughout this, the opportunities are there. We're certainly seeing a pattern that's conducive for a bigger storm to come through. It's just a matter of all the other factors lining up: the temperatures, the jet stream, the direction, length, all those things to match up to have that big winter storm. But we're certainly not out of the window of opportunity for that.
So even though meteorological winter will, say that 10 times fast, will end at the end of February. So meteorological winter is that quarter year of December, January, February. Calendar version of winter goes through March. By no means is March a break out the t-shirts and winter's over.
Yeah, no, definitely not.
So with that said, countdown. The one I'm looking forward to the most, the changing of the clocks. I mean, now we're setting the sun at almost 5:20, which is great.
We're getting there, but it's still dark fairly early, and especially with the schedules we have, it's like we're not seeing a lot of daylight. We're in here a lot of the day, so certainly having those later sunset times will be nice.
Yeah, so as of now, we're about 5:20. Compare that to back in late December when it was about 4:13, 4:15, we're setting the sun. Spring, calendar version. 35 days. That means absolutely nothing.
I know.
Mother Nature does not follow the calendar. Early springs around here can certainly, obviously, still be cold. It's quite.
It can be cold even into mid to even late April. You're seeing below average temperatures, so it'll be interesting to see with the pattern we have now, kind of how that will carry over into March and April.
We actually average an inch or less of snow during early April as well.
Yeah.
And here's the big one. This is way
summer.
Summer. It's 127 days away.
So yeah, still pretty far, but I mean, time goes by fast.
Yep.
We're already halfway through February, so we'll get there eventually. But yeah, certainly spring a little bit more in the front view here. And as we approach spring, the big question will be how spring-like will it be, or will we still be kind of hanging on to those wintry temperatures and precipitation chances?
So probably in our next Beyond the Forecast, or coming up in the next couple of months, we'll talk about the spring and summer outlook. We start kind of flirting with a little bit about what the hurricane season will be like and things like that, whether or not we're going to continue to improve on the kind of the rain deficit and the drought. So those are topics and things like that we'll cover. But all right, good questions, some good stuff. So the takeaways here before we wrap things up is that so far the winter's been running a little bit colder than average. Snowfall, we still have a ways to catch up here. The short-term forecast is perhaps not only wetter and stormier, but perhaps trending colder now through the end of February.
Which could be conducive for some snowfall. So if you're a snow lover out there, certainly chances are not over yet.
And we'll end it with this. March can be March and early April can be a real roller coaster month because now you're getting the transition from winter to spring and eventually summer. You get a lot of big temperature swings, a variety of precipitation, so it keeps us on our toes. So
we'll be busy here in the Weather Center. Our weather team will be very busy the next couple months, that's for sure.
All right. So wrapping things up, our latest beyond the forecast, talking about this past winter, where we are and where we're headed. Coming up, and over the next several weeks, we'll come up with our next topic, and we'll be fielding some questions on social media so folks can kind of send their questions to WPRI.com. For Catie McNeil, I'm meteorologist Tony Petrarca. Keep thinking snow if you want it.